Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hi, friends. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. This is where you'll hear one-on-one conversations with women who have inspirational stories to share. These are entrepreneurs, authors, musicians, spiritual teachers, fitness gurus, adventurers, and, in today's case, a race car driver. Though they come from a wide variety of backgrounds, what they have in common is that they are approaching the world by seeing the possibilities, not the obstacles. Today's guest is Martina Kwan. Martina has a really interesting backstory. She's Chinese-Korean, was born in Hong Kong, and then moved with her family to Beirut when she was 8, and then on to Hamburg, Bahrain, Amsterdam, and Switzerland for college before moving to the United States. She speaks English, German, French, and is learning Mandarin. Now, this global upbringing, particularly living in Beirut for 2 years at the start of their civil war, has given her a very unique perspective on the world and has helped her navigate very challenging situations. Martina is an award-winning business founder and entrepreneur, a speaker, a champion mindset coach, and, what I found most interesting, a race car driver. Martina has found success throughout her life by being bold and asking for what she wants and not being daunted or intimidated when working in environments that are male-dominated. She's a true inspiration, and I know you're going to love this conversation today. Before we get to that, just a reminder that if you'd like to support the show, you can do so with a donation through Patreon. By becoming a part of our community, you'll have access to bonus content that's usually in the form of a question I ask guests. In the case of Martina, I asked her what she thought were the biggest blockers that women face to becoming successful. So you'll get to hear her answer to that if you are a Patreon supporter. You can join our community for just $5 a month, and you'll also get a heads up about what guests are coming up and have the ability to get your question answered by that guest. You'll also be invited to join our private Facebook group, and that is ladies only. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/bebold. As always, sharing this episode with a couple of friends is super helpful to me, as word of mouth is the number one way that podcasts grow. So you'll get some karma points for that, and I'd really appreciate it. Okay, with that, please enjoy this conversation with Martina Kwan. Martina, thanks so much for being here virtually today. I love doing conversations like when we're doing just kind of one-on-one sit-downs, and normally I meet people in person, but the benefit of the pandemic is that I'm forced to kind of meet with people distantly, and it means I can chat with folks like you, and you're in Southern California. Is that right?
That's right. No, and I think it's actually a wonderful way of meeting. How else would we be connecting like this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, I really do love sitting down with people in person, but this just opens up so many more opportunities. And like you said, just to be able to have this opportunity is a gift. So I do really appreciate you being here today. What I would love to do is, in light of the news that just came out yesterday, and this podcast, I'm not sure when this will be released, just for frame of reference for folks, but yesterday there was the big explosion in Beirut, and I know that you've got some pretty close connections there. You spent some of your childhood in Beirut. Do you still have friends or family that are there?
Yeah, I still have several family members. So my stepfather was Lebanese, and we moved to Beirut when I was an 8 to 10-year-old girl. So we do still have some family and friends. And what happened yesterday is pretty incredible. I can't even imagine what the people are going through, especially those who were there for the Civil War.
What years were the Civil War?
So it started in 1974 and it went on for over a decade. So quite a while.
Right. And you were there for 2 years of that. Is that right?
Yeah, when it first started.
So you stayed there with your family for 2 years before you guys got out.
That's right. Yeah, we we moved there from Hong Kong, and, it was supposed to be a new life. And then pretty soon, a few months after we moved, the Civil War started. And we were hoping, for things to get better. But finally, after 2 years, we had to leave as refugees, and we left everything behind.
Let's talk about that for a minute, if you don't mind. We'll come back to what it is that you're doing right now with yourself and what brings us together today. But since we're talking about Beirut and we're talking about your childhood, let's just kind of go with that. You were born in Hong Kong, and your mother is German, your father is Chinese. Is that right?
That's right.
How did they meet?
So my father was at Cambridge University in England. And my German mom was there as an au pair girl. And that's how they met. And, it was somewhat taboo at the time, German mom and Chinese father to meet. But they loved each other, got married, and moved to Hong Kong.
So their relationship was a bit taboo at the time. So you said that they met in England, and then from there they moved to Hong Kong.
Yes.
Did your dad have roots in Hong Kong then? His family was there?
Yeah. So my Chinese side, they're from Hong Kong, and all of the children studied in England. So my dad and his brother and my aunt as well. She also studied in America, but it's pretty typical to go overseas to study from Hong Kong and then come back.
Do you know how your mom fared going to Hong Kong and just kind of being uprooted from her own culture?
Yeah, I mean, she actually assimilated really well because, Hong Kong was a British crown colony. So there are a lot of British people there and a lot of expats. So there were a lot of other Germans and other, British people. So it was not as probably culture shocky as going to a country where it's all homogenous.
So Hong Kong, and then what age did you leave Hong Kong?
So we left when I was 8.
Okay, and then right on to Beirut. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that time?
I do. I mean, Beirut was actually a really beautiful place. It's right by the Mediterranean Sea, and within an hour behind you, you can go skiing. So,
no kidding, in Beirut?
Yeah. So
wow, I had no idea.
It's really beautiful topography, lots of citrus groves, and so it was a wonderful place to be at the beginning. We would go to the beach club and just play by the sea, and we would ride our bikes. And actually, when the war started, we weren't able to take the bus through the fighting neighborhoods to go to our school, so we ended up having to go to the German embassy every day and picking up our homework. So my sister and I became really good roller skaters. And we would skate down and jump steps to get to the German embassy and pick up our homework.
It must be pretty flat.
Yeah, it was actually, I personally wouldn't let my own children do what we did as kids.
That's funny. Yeah.
And then the other thing we would do is we would go to the American University of Beirut and climb trees. So we were quite tomboy daredevilish.
How old are you? I
was 8 to 10, and my sister she's 2 years older.
And right now you're 54.
Yes.
So at that time, it's funny that you say you wouldn't let your own kids kind of do that same old thing. I don't have kids myself, but I think back to what we did as kids. Like, we used to skateboard everywhere, and there were hills all around us where I grew up. And I think, oh my gosh, like now kids are like outfitted with, with their helmets and all of their gear and everything. We're so protective of them. And I wonder, what's going to happen with these kids as they grow up, because we'll get into this because I'm really, really curious about this. Like, you obviously have a lot less fear than many other women. I think many people in general, but also specifically women. So there was something in your upbringing where you were out having fun and you were learning to kind of be free and roller skate, yeah. Around the city with no problem at all. So from Beirut on to Hamburg, is that right?
Yes.
And a few years there.
Yeah, a few years there.
Did you enjoy Hamburg?
That was actually a culture shock. So, One of the things about growing up being half Chinese and half German is that you don't feel like you fit in anywhere. So in Hong Kong, I wasn't Chinese enough, and in Germany, I wasn't German enough. So you definitely stand out a little bit as an outsider, or you feel different as a child. So oddly enough, in Beirut, it was sort of a mix of people from everywhere. So we kind of felt like we belonged in a weird sense, and that whole war, living there during the war experience really, really shaped us. I mean, going out in the street and collecting, my sister and I have our own empty bullet shell and bomb shrapnel collection that we used to collect. And my mom still has it in Hamburg.
No kidding. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So when we moved to Hamburg, first of all, we had to leave in the middle of the night and go to the Beirut International Airport through gun checkpoints. So, and leave everything behind, all of our belongings. And we weren't sure if we were ever going to go back. And it ends up that the Civil War lasted till 1990. So we never ended up going back. So first of all, arriving in Germany was weird, without anything on your back. Sort of our German family and friends helped my mom and my stepfather and us get settled, and people donated beds and clothing and all sorts of things. So we really had to start afresh. So that was a weird experience. And then also, we had gone to German schools, but now we were thrown into the German school system. And, it's quite a difficult language. I mean, we speak it fluently, but it took a while to really get into the swing of things in terms of the school there. And also feeling like, okay, we're not, 100% German. But I love Hamburg. I mean, it's called the Green City. And it's so beautiful, and they have so many parks and bike riding paths, and I love going back. And that's where I started horseback riding and becoming passionate about horses. It's really an incredible place. There's so much to do.
So even though you felt a little out of place, you still found your own place in it, and you managed to enjoy it and find things that you really love to do.
Yeah. So, during the war, I was actually became a big daydreamer, and I would daydream about So I would play with my Barbie horseback riding set with the stable, and I had horses there. And that was kind of my escape during the war. And I would daydream about riding in the forest. And when we got to Germany, I realized, okay, I'm going to go riding in the forest. So I actually say this to a lot of young people is that, in order to, you have to visualize your goals. And part of it is daydreaming. And daydreaming actually can be very useful because that's when everything becomes crystal clear in your mind. So yeah, once I started going to the horseback riding stable, and I would do anything to get there. I mean, I would get up at, 4 a.m. and walk to the train station, change trains twice, get on a bus, and then walk another half an hour to get to the horses. But it was a passion, it was really, really fun.
You said there that you say to young people that something that's really important is daydreaming. Can I ask why you said young people specifically?
Yeah, well, a few months ago, I actually did a short video on, how to become successful. And it was geared towards young people that I was going to speak at the Long Beach Grand Prix. And, coming from different schools in LA, and we ended up doing it virtually, and the videos were distributed. So I think that a lot of young people are going through a hard time, whether they're here, whether they're there, whatever their socioeconomic status. And my recommendation is one of the best ways to deal with it, and the way I dealt with the war and kind of pushing it to the side, was by daydreaming, and daydreaming of positive things, daydreaming of better days. So, let's say you have a child in a home where there's a lot of conflict. A good way to escape that is to daydream and say, you know what, I'm going to get out of the situation, and how am I going to get there? Let me think of some goals that I want to set so that I can go out and achieve them.
Are you doing that now with COVID? Is that something that you consciously do?
Yeah, I've always been a big daydreamer, and I still am, and I think it's really helped me with everything that I've done. The businesses, it's just something that it's pleasurable. It's something that you can think positive thoughts. And I really do believe that, a lot of people are focusing on the news right now. And, I don't really think it's healthy to have the news channel on 24/7, It's just better to, well, I have a dog, so I go walk my dog and, get some exercise and daydream and plan for the future. And this has been it's sort of been like an incubation period for my two new businesses. And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I have to say it's just been oddly perfect that it's been so quiet outside. It's like the noise has just died down and allowed me to focus.
Yeah, gosh, I've got a bunch of different things that I want to bring up. One thing is that I was reminded, I was listening to, I don't even know what I was listening to. I don't think it was the news or it was a podcast or something where they were talking about Holocaust survivors and hope. And I don't even think that this had to do with COVID, but they were talking about Holocaust survivors and the fact that those who had hope were the ones who fared better over the long term because they had some kind of a hope. It's like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's like you have to find the meaning in it. You have to find the hope, something to look forward to. And I feel like that very much like what we're all going through right now. Something that I was thinking about this morning was I just wonder what the long-term effects are going to be for us, like what kind of, like we're all going to have in some ways our own PTSD of this, of when things do go back to normal, whatever normal is, whatever we're used to, or whatever kind of how things shift for us in the future. What kind of long-lasting imprint is this going to have on us? In 2 years, even let's say every person was vaccinated, are we still going to turn our head when someone sneezes without sneezing into their elbow kind of thing? Like what is going to happen? But I think that daydreaming, and I know that you did a vision board, and we'll talk about that as well, kind of what brought you to racing. One of the things that brought you to racing, like that daydreaming and that thinking about that in a very positive way is so important for us right now.
Mm-hmm. It really is. In any situation. And also for me, as I was leading up to 50 and making this change and deciding I was going to leave my marriage, and B, I decided to become a race car driver. I spent 6 years during the times that I did have alone in my car thinking about daydreaming and daydreaming about the possibilities of a different life. So it's always been with me.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go through the progression here a little bit more. I'm so eager to talk to you about your race car driving, but so after Hamburg, and I do think that this is really interesting, you spent time in Bahrain. Mm-hmm. Why I really want to make sure that we don't skip over that is it is one of those places that you really, really enjoyed. And as Americans, like we hardly know anything about Bahrain. I think maybe more people have heard of it because that's where Michael Jackson lived, right? Like I think toward the end of his life, I think he had a home there. And for me, I was like, what's he doing there? That sounds so crazy. But you were there for about a year or so, is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what was it about it that you enjoyed so much? Like, why did that resonate? Why did that area resonate so much for you?
Well, when we moved to Bahrain from Germany, in Germany I had gone to German schools and it was a pretty homogenous society. And so when we moved to Bahrain, it was the first time that I went to a school. It was an American school called Bahrain School. That was an international school. And so there were people there from 40 or 50 countries and from all over the world. And, we were all there as expats, and it was such a great place to be. And my sister and I started doing all sorts of sports. I mean, track and field and swimming and tennis team. And, it was just sort of a different kind of atmosphere. I also horseback rode there in the desert, which was incredible.
How much older is your sister?
He's 2 years older.
Oh, okay. So very close in age.
Yeah.
So really like a best buddy to have.
Yeah. So we had a lot of the same friends. And, one of the big things for me is that I skipped 8th grade in Bahrain and went straight to 9th grade. So, which was probably not the best thing at the end of the day because I was then the youngest in the class in 9th grade. But it was an incredible time. And it really for the first time made me appreciate being a Eurasian, and people liked us and accepted us and thought we were unique and different and didn't sort of look at us like, oh, they're not one of us. We're all kind of a melting pot of different people. So it was actually a great experience to do that. And then we ended up staying in international schools throughout high school.
So what was it that was taking your family around to all these places?
So my stepfather was in the airline cargo business. Yeah, a lot of people think military, but it was airline cargo.
It wasn't CIA.
No.
No, this is your stepdad, you said.
Yes.
So your parents divorced in Hong Kong?
They did.
And then your mom remarried, and then you started moving around.
That's right.
In the big picture, are you happy that you had all of these experiences around the world growing up, or was it unsettling?
I'm really happy that I did. I mean, I think it definitely broadens your view of different people and understanding of different cultures. And I do think, because it is a global economy now, that's really important to understand how business people work in different countries and what the, customs are. Starting with in Western cultures and Northern European cultures, there's a distance that's acceptable. You want an arm's length distance, whereas when you're in Hong Kong or in China, people are on top of each other. And, when you're not used to it coming from the West, it's like, gosh, this is too much. So just understanding the different cultures and was really interesting. I loved growing up in different places. I mean, it was hard as well, starting in new schools and having to make friends. So sometimes we focus more on making friends than our grades at the beginning when we moved, but it was a great experience.
Yeah. And it doesn't hurt that you speak three languages pretty solidly. Is that right? And you're working on Mandarin now?
Well, yeah, German, English, moderate French. And yes, I was picking up Mandarin last year.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Well, now you have all this time, right? I know a lot of people are spending their time studying languages at this point. So Bahrain, then on to Amsterdam for a short stint, back to Hamburg.
Yeah. Amsterdam was incredible. Again, it was a culture shock leaving Bahrain where we were chaperoned around. We had a chauffeur who drove us places and we always had to be chaperoned.
Was that for safety reasons?
Yeah, it was just a cultural thing, especially when you have daughters. When we moved to Amsterdam, it was, wow, now suddenly we could take the bus by ourselves. And it was quite an interesting time.
Oh, and you enjoyed that. You enjoyed kind of the being able to get out on your own.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, God, it sounds kind of nice to be chaperoned around and driven around, not having to navigate a metro system. But yeah, I get it. Yeah, especially as young people, you have that freedom that there's not somebody on your back constantly. And then you went to school in Switzerland.
Yes. After I graduated from the International School of Hamburg, I started college in Switzerland, and that was incredible. It was in a ski resort, the American College of Switzerland, and there were maybe 200 people total in the college. And, every weekend we would pick a different ski resort to go to. And then during the summer, we would go to Milan or, Paris or Munich. So that was incredible. And I made some incredible friends, and we're all still friends on Facebook now.
Sometimes social media is social because it keeps us together with old friends. What brought you to the United States?
So it was pretty usual. Most of the international school kids either go to England or they go to the United States to study. And I wanted to stay in Europe a little longer. I really love Europe. And I considered it my home. And for many, many years, I considered Germany my home, even if we didn't live there. So I was not in a big rush to come to the States, but finally I transferred to the University of Miami. So I started in Miami, got my first Master of Science degree there, and then moved to get my second Master of Science in accounting from Bentley University in Massachusetts, and then started my career in New York City, which was such a great place to start a career. But also because everyone's so fast-paced and efficient there, it's very hard to move away from New York and then not be impatient.
And then what brought you to California more specifically? Was it the race car driving?
Well, after New York, we moved to Miami. So I had just co-founded Neoteric Luxury with my ex-husband and had our two daughters, Zoe and Coco. And Miami was really the place where I grew the business into a 9-time furniture design award-winning company that service 5-star hotels, palaces around the world, and celebrity homes. So it was really exciting to grow that business. But at a certain point, when our factories were in Indonesia and in the Philippines, and so in order to get the containers to Miami, it added another 2 to 3 weeks because the container ships had to go through the Panama Canal. So not only was that more expensive, but it was time consuming. So in order to service our clients better, we thought it would be better to move to Los Angeles, where my sister here now lives as well. So it was more convenient to fly to the factory, to do quality control. There were so many reasons why we moved to California. So race car driving wasn't even in the picture.
So when did race car driving become part of the picture for you?
Again, with Neoteric Luxury, every year since 2011, we sponsored an event, and it was a track day in Colorado. So we would go and schmooze and network with other hospitality people, and we would drive race cars around for a few days. And that was my favorite event of the year. And so that kind of got my interest going. And then I started in 2015 going to the Porsche Owners Club here. Like, sporadically, I'd tell my ex-husband, okay, you watch the kids for a change. Now let me go.
So you owned a Porsche, and so that was your entree into that world.
Yes.
When you were racing, and you said there was a track day in Colorado, what did that consist of? Was that going to a racetrack and driving around in circles to see how fast you could go, or what? Was there some other part of that?
No. So as a sponsor, so basically there were interior designers there and purchasing people from different, FF&E companies, and a racing school would bring instructors and they would bring different cars. So they would bring different race cars, and then they would also bring special cars like the GT3 or the BMW i8 or Corvettes that you could just stand in line and choose which one you wanted to drive. And yeah, so I know it sounds kind of funny, going around in circles, but actually road racing is not like NASCAR, which is an oval. It's more technical because you're going through different turns around the track. So it's not like you're just going in a circle. It's, there are many different corners to the racetrack, and there's a definite skill to doing that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So the track itself is not just an oval.
No. Mm-mm.
How long is the track? Is it a couple of miles?
So it depends on the track. So the one in Colorado was probably 1 and some, close to 2 miles. So it depends on the track.
And so when you went, just as a sponsor, you'd wait in line, you'd pick your car. Did they get you all geared up? You'd put on your helmet and you would get behind the wheel. Would you have somebody with you who was kind of directing you and helping you, like a co-driver, a professional?
Yeah, an instructor.
Okay, the instructor. Okay. And then how did you make the leap from taking that kind of, I won't say it's a lesson, but kind of having a joyride, a little bit more of a joyride, to then figuring out that you wanted to get more serious about it and spend more time on the track?
Yeah. So in 2015, I found the Porsche Owners Club, and, I had belonged to the Porsche Club of America, which is a different organization in Miami, but they basically did cars and coffee. And so when I moved to California, there was a PCA as well, but they also only did cars and coffee. But the Porsche Owners Club actually did track days. So I was like, wow, I really want to go. So the first time I went was in a January, and it was to the racetrack that now I've co-founded a racing school at. But that drive up the hill was incredible. I would get up in the morning and the sun would start rising as I was driving. And it just felt like, all my troubles were left behind as I kept driving further and further away. And the racetrack's in the desert. So when I got there, I was like, I feel so at home. What is it about this place? And it kind of reminded me of the desert environment in Bahrain. And third of all, it was great to get away, and I'm super competitive. So I love doing things that are challenging, to see. So, when you first start out, it's like to see who's the fastest. So, I enjoy that.
Were there any other women at the track?
When I first got there, no. And there still are very few. So I want to change that. And it's not even just about becoming a race car driver. It's fun to go and just challenge yourself.
What do you think is the most challenging part of it?
When
you say challenge yourself, I'm trying to think, is it challenging because you're pushing yourself to an uncomfortable limit? Like, I'm going to do 100. No, I'm going to do 120. Or is there another part of it that maybe I just don't understand, maybe more technical part of it that is the challenge?
Well, I think with anything in life, the challenge is if you want to be the best, how do you get there? What do you do in order to become the best? So the challenge is becoming the best at no matter what it is, whether it's a business, whether it's race car driving, whether it's tennis. When I was a child, I was not a very good loser in games. So the challenge is really challenging yourself to become better and better. And it entails a lot of work and it entails a lot of practice and seeing yourself improve and having other people see that you're improving. Then I started, always getting first places. So I was the fastest and mostly.
So this is from out of a field of men.
Yes.
You're finding yourself that you're the fastest.
Right.
I'm trying to think of how to say this without saying sexist, right? Or without seeming sexist, because I'm a woman who's all about like being bold and that, we can do, just, as much as guys can do, right? But it just seems like with the amount of testosterone, going around a racetrack, that it's natural that you would maybe find less fear, more testosterone, more aggression, more assertiveness in a male. What was it? Was it just your mindset and your desire to be competitive and to be the best that you could be and to maybe kind of outshine these guys? Like what were your qualities that made you so good, so much better than these guys?
I mean, I think, first of all, living in Beirut made me pretty fearless. Anywhere after that was, no big deal. Even this pandemic compared to living through war, the pandemic to me is no big deal. It's all a state of mind that when you've had sort of traumatic experiences as a child living through war, that everything else just doesn't seem that big of a deal. And second of all, I was in accounting and on Wall Street. So I was used to being in male-dominated industries, and I really enjoyed competing against men, and I enjoy being the best, whether it's in a field of men or women, especially mostly men, because there is still a perception that women can't do it or, they might not be good enough. And I've always wanted to prove people wrong, that we can do it no matter what it is, and that the girl can be better, whether it's at accounting or whatever you choose.
Right. Sure. Brain surgery.
Yeah.
How did the guys take your wins?
I don't think most guys really like it when a girl comes in. And I've seen some guys move into a different class of car because I was in that class. So,
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the man and how secure he is.
Were there men or are there men who come up to you and say, "You go, girl, like you are kicking ass," like being really supportive?
Yeah, some did. Yeah, definitely. But I think, the thing for most women is that they do feel intimidated walking into a room full of men. So that's something that I want to change.
How do you change that? Like you said, without putting somebody through a war, right? Without, like you said, a lot of your fearlessness comes from the fact that you went through this time in Beirut. And I grew up with 3 brothers. And so I'm very comfortable. I can walk into a room of men and not realize that I'm in a room full of men just because it's like that. It's just kind of what I'm used to. And I work in predominantly a male-dominated world myself. Like in the travel industry, a lot of it is male-owned. They're male-owned businesses. But yeah, how do you, without putting someone through something like that, how do you get them comfortable in that kind of a situation? How do you get women comfortable in a situation that's male-dominated?
So One of my goals with the new racing school is to have women only track days. And even the track days, we're going to have one on September 18th is going to be co-ed, but it's not going to be the same as what I experienced walking in or other people experience walking in. It's going to be far less intimidating. What we're doing is unlike any other school or track day where it kind of just throws you on the track, and it's going to make people feel extremely comfortable. I can tell you more about it in a minute, but yeah. So number one is having, women only track days where they feel, we already have many different groups here in LA where they might not be race car drivers, but we all love, our cars. So we get together for lunch or to go on drives. And, so there is a movement here. There are a lot of women who are becoming more and more interested in cars.
So starting with that, starting with the fact that just recognizing that in an environment that's typically male dominated, that there's a whole group of women who also enjoy that, and that it's okay.
Yeah.
Like kind of giving them permission of saying, sure, that's fine, that's your interest. Let's make it a thing.
Right. And, so even more than that. So I think, part of the problem with getting women or men interested in going to the racetrack is that, again, they're kind of just thrown out there. So I have a simulator here, and my plan is to do a drive on the track that we're going to, for example, in September to Willow Springs, of the Willow Springs track. And it'll be in slow motion, and it'll be showing all the different and talking over, okay, this is what we're going to do here. This is what we're going to do here. So I can't even tell you how much the simulator helped me last year when I was driving semi-professionally for Celine. I mean, I felt like I knew the track by the time I got there. So I want to put a level of comfort into anyone who's starting or an intermediate that they haven't received before. It's a level of experience that will make them so comfortable. So number one, the racing simulator. Number two, Dwayne DeMent.
Well, it's almost, sorry to interrupt you, but it reminded me, it's almost like visualizing. It's almost like having a vision board or daydreaming. Like you're there virtually before you're there physically. And then it just makes everything, it makes the path so much more easy.
So much more easy, and nobody ever provided that to me. And so I thought that would be an excellent idea for newcomers. And then the other thing is usually all the YouTube videos are in loud race cars and the cameras, mounted like way back here. And all you see is the back of the person's head. So the other thing we're going to do differently is to have a video from the car, my Cayenne S, which is very quiet and stable. And Dwayne will drive, I will narrate, I will drive, he will narrate. So we'll be doing that. And so through the repetition of listening to a very easy to understand video on top of the 3D, racing simulator will really be very helpful. And then the day of, we're going to do a track walk. It's going to be 1.5 hours. Let's go and look at each corner. So by the time they get in the car, it's like, wow, I've been here. I feel comfortable, so it's kind of desensitizing people to, oh my God, I what do I do?
That's really smart. So you are able kind of in this environment to still run your business, and you're doing it. Obviously, you're going to do it in some socially distant way, but still be able to have this track event in September. Have you had to change a lot of events this year, make a lot of changes because of COVID, or did it just happen to hit at a time when you didn't have to make a lot of changes?
Yeah, so we just started the school. So originally on July 25th and 6th, we wanted to have a teen car control clinic. So that's the other component of the racing school that I'm personally very passionate about because of my 14 and 16-year-old girls. But for that one, that needed to be canceled, understandably so. Parents are very fearful and things were shutting down again. And with the teens, the difference is that an instructor has to be in the car. So it really isn't feasible right now, and we're going to wait for that. Whereas, for the precision driving event in September, everyone drives their own car. and they're going to be alone in their car, and we're going to have radio communication. So on top of the videos and the track walk, it's going to be almost as good because we're going to have the radio and feedback, immediate feedback, almost as good as us being in the car as instructors. Yeah, so far we really haven't had to do that much, but in fact, I believe it will help the school in a sense, because now we're authorized to sign off students that want to participate in Porsche Club of America, as well as Porsche Owners Club events. So we're able to provide the certification that the students are ready, where they wouldn't normally be able to drive right now if they're not certified.
Right. How fast do you drive? And then how fast will these people be driving on this event in September?
It all depends on the car. And so you really can't say, okay, this is the speed, because a GT1 car will, let's say, do like a 118. A GT4 car will do, let's say, a 125 around that track. It's definitely this event on September 18th is geared towards beginners. So we're not going to focus on speed. It doesn't matter how fast or slow anyone's going. It's about learning. There's no pressure there.
Typically, like for a race that you've won, how fast are you going? Just so, I mean, the fact that you gave a range of like 118 to 125, that helps me understand. I know for your purposes, you need to be more specific, but to me, that's like, it's not 150 and it's not 90. You know what I mean?
So the Celine car I drove last year, I went 160, 70 miles.
Wow.
So that was incredible. It's more powerful than my car. So it was very thrilling.
Was that a Porsche?
No, it was a Celine.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even know what a Celine is.
Oh, it's an American brand.
Is it an American brand of a racing car?
Yes.
Like I'm not going to see it on the street here in Seattle. Mm-mm. Okay. So thank you for clarifying that. I was thinking Celine was something else, like a sponsor, but I didn't realize it was the actual car.
Yeah, you usually do Celine Ford Mustangs. And this was a special race car last year.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Very fun. I want to come down there in September. That would be pretty neat. I don't have a car. I have a Fiat 500.
I'll give you a ride in mine.
Okay, that's a deal. Masks on. Yeah, my Fiat 500 maybe could do 80 with a top up. At least it's a convertible. It looks like it's fun. Oh, you made a comment about like the pandemic. It's easier to get through the pandemic when you've been through certain things, like you said. And I had that thought earlier when you were talking about having to leave Beirut, and you thought that you were going to go back. So you had this feeling of like, well, when things calm down, we're going to go back. Mm-hmm. And then it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. And it made me feel like, oh, I can understand that feeling, because back in March, we're thinking, 2 to 4 weeks. At least that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Thinking, we're going to get through this pretty quickly here. This is all, everybody's so fearful, and it's going to be better than we don't do these kinds of things here. Like these kinds of things don't happen to us, right?
Right.
But now there's this feeling of like, I get it. It's like we keep waiting. Well, it'll be the fall. And then I think we know it's not going to be the fall. Well, is it going to be early next year? Well, we just don't really know if it's going to be early next year. And it just keeps it. There's just this. It is like almost like a false sense of hope of like, maybe it's going to be that. And that must have been kind of that same feeling that you had of Beirut, just like, we'll be back. And then 10 years later, the war is still going on. Yeah. So with the pandemic, are you very aware of that is how you're responding to it? That while other people, maybe even in your community, are pulling their hair out going, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. And in the back of your mind, you're going, no, I'll tell you what bad is.
The thing is, I think for Americans, aside from Pearl Harbor, 9/11 was probably the most shocking time in this country. And so most people really haven't gone through something like this. I mean, the world hasn't gone through it. It is an incredibly scary time, and rightfully so. There's no certainty, and I really feel bad for the small business owners, especially that are saddled with retail rents. and unable to generate the traffic to make ends meet. So who knows what's going to happen? But I never discount somebody else's experience or non-experience. I would never out loud say, "Oh,
Of course. Mm-hmm.
I try to empathize with most people. Everyone has their own experience, and everyone's reality is real. It's their reality, right? So
Yeah, I'm on a phone call each week with my colleagues in the travel world, other tour operators. And one gentleman, he has a company in India. He's Indian. He's currently in Vancouver, where he's based 6 months out of the year. So he's happily stuck in Vancouver. But he brought up on a call one day about, he said, in India, we're used to this. Like every couple of years, there's something that happens that just maybe decimates the travel industry specifically, whether it's a bombing or there's, local outbreak of a civil war, something going on. And that really helped put it into perspective for me, because I just saw, just like you said, there's very much a cultural thing here of just like my response of like, this doesn't happen to us. This can't be true because this kind of thing doesn't happen to us. But we just have to realize that, yeah, it does. And if you put it into perspective, like the bigger, broader perspective of things that, people go through in the world all the time, we're just it's rocked our world, because we're not used to it. But, people go through this. And like you said, you want to stay empathetic, with people, but you also, like the level of confidence that you have that we will get through this, you can help other people just by showing that confidence and by saying, you know what, we're going to get through it. And guess what? I have an event coming up in September and you're all invited, and we're going to continue on and we're going to move through it. And this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. And I think, in terms of your travel, first of all, I mean, your destinations and your whole concept is amazing. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of pent up demand for travel. People they'll be dying to go to Morocco.
I know.
It's going to be so special, even more special than it would this year, because I think there's also a wonderful sense of community. So whereas, you sort of walk by strangers in the past, now you smile and say hello through your masks,
Yeah, you see the eyes. You see their eyes squint and you know that they're smiling. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I think it's brought a lot of people closer.
Right. An appreciation. There's an appreciation. I know, just because I know a lot of people are sheltering inside, that when I'm out, I always try to, make kind of a bigger deal of saying hello to people, just like say, I'm glad to see you outside, it's like, that's good, just to kind of encourage that. Because I think we do need to be outside.
That's right.
More. But yeah, what you're doing, is great. You are moving through it. You're bringing with it your own experience. Your experience as a young girl has helped you foster some fearlessness and to be able to move through this, and to know that it's temporary. I think that's the big thing, is it's temporary, and even in uncertainty, it's still it's still temporary.
That's right.
We just don't know. We just don't know when, but that's what uncertainty is, right? So you are a transformational coach for women. Are you currently working with individual women to kind of help them on different levels?
So yeah, I'm a champion mindset coach for female coaches over 40. And so I do have individual clients, but right now I'm launching a group coaching program that I'm really excited about. So it's just launching now. And so this is actually my other baby that I've been working on for the past few months, furiously at the computer. And
what does it mean to be a champion mindset coach? How do you work with women?
Basically, it helps women have the strength and mindset. So a lot of female coaches, right now, whatever coach they are, their relationship or career coaches, or health coaches. They're really struggling to get clients. And so a lot of these women are doing Facebook Lives and challenges. So there are different ways of marketing, and those ways aren't working for them. So, having been a business person for 30 years, one of my passions has always been marketing and growing my own businesses and making the businesses that I've started a success. So I've come up with a way that is much more straightforward for women to actually attract clients than sitting there in front of one or two viewers on their Facebook Lives and challenges. And so this is the program that I'm launching. So it involves mindset, it involves getting rid of your limiting beliefs. It involves using Facebook ads and webinars and many different things so that it's the most straightforward way to attract people to your business. And I think what's great about the internet and Facebook specifically is that they have 2.6 billion Facebook monthly users. And so I used to advertise by paying $10,000 to a magazine and having one page in a magazine, right, for a month. Now with Facebook advertising, it's possible to reach somebody no matter where they are in the world. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's really the wave of the future. So that's my second business. So DK Racing School, and I'm the CEO and champion mindset coach of Daring to Be Different Coaching.
Daring to Be Different.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. What do you think is behind the limiting beliefs that we have? And maybe you can't even answer that because it's different for everyone, but do you see kind of a common theme specifically with women where they limit themselves? Maybe they tell themselves a story about what they can't do. And do you have any idea kind of why that happens, where that comes from?
Well, I think a lot of women especially have trouble with money, feeling guilty about money. And, there's a discrepancy in the way men are paid and the way women are paid. And in my view, I was always a pretty hard negotiator and, would go into my managers at KPMG or Pricewaterhouse or Lehman Brothers and say, this is what I want and this is what I'm worth. And a lot of women won't do that. They won't go in and, basically walk in confidently like a man would and say, hey, this is what I'm worth. So I think with women, a lot of women also feel funny about charging money to other people, worried that it might be too much. So there are a lot of limiting beliefs around money. And there are a lot of limiting beliefs around, I can't do something, or I need to behave in a certain way because of the way we were raised. A lot of women are coming from a half Chinese culture. It's better to have a son than a daughter, basically. So the expectations for a woman growing up in that culture, or let's say a Latin culture or Arabic culture, is you're born and you're kind of already expected to be beneath the man. And you're always going to be treated that way unless you stand up for yourself. So I think a lot of things come from our childhood and also from our parent situation. How did our moms allow our dads to treat them? And what were their beliefs? You have your traditional woman. And now in 2020, we're much more confident, I find, in just being who we want to be, having our own identity. Whereas, traditionally women have catered more to the men in their lives.
Well, given that you are half Chinese, how did you become so confident and knowing that you wanted to just walk into your boss's office and ask for more money or just be able to negotiate a contract? Where did you get that confidence from?
I think you're born with it. You can work on becoming more confident, but I was always a pretty independent child, even before Beirut. First day of school, I was just like, okay, la-di-da, let's go. And my sister was kind of lagging behind. I was like, come on, let's go. So I think a lot of it has to do with your own personality. But again, being competitive, I want to be the best. So if that means beating a guy, then that's what it means.
Did you feel like you had to be competitive with your sister? Was there some of that, like I'm 2 years younger than she is, so I have to even keep up with her or be better than her?
Well, we played a lot of varsity sports. So in Amsterdam, we were on the varsity basketball and volleyball team, but we were pretty similar in terms of sports. So, and I think both of us really had incredible careers. She was president of Warner Brothers and is now president of Universal. So
no kidding.
She's a super woman. She was on the Hollywood Reporter's Top Women in Hollywood list. So she's had and is having a stellar career in the movie business. And whereas I've had a stellar career in accounting and finance, working on Wall Street with the big six companies and having my own award-winning businesses. So I don't think there's any competition. It's been wonderful having her in my life, and she's definitely an inspiration. We're really different people, but competition-wise, I don't think there is.
So something in both of your DNA.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one of you got it and the other didn't.
No, we both want it to be successful.
How fun. I bet that is great. I bet there's got to be some level of not competition even between the two of you, but some level of expectation and support of each other, of like, don't put up with that, don't put up with that shit, sister.
And, I always joke, it's like, having Chinese dad and a German mom, those are cultures that really expect you to achieve. So
right, true.
Definitely some of that. I mean, my father, went to Cambridge, and he grew his accounting firm into the largest Chinese accounting firm in Hong Kong. So incredibly smart. And so there was definitely a lot of expectations.
Right. A lot to live up to, a lot of expectation there. As we wrap up here, is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask or that you would like to chat about today? Something that I might have skipped?
I think we're good.
Okay, good. I have a couple of other quick questions for you. I like to wrap up these conversations by asking the guest, what does it mean to you to be bold?
Oh, gosh. Being bold is the only way to be. It's something that you can't be afraid of. If there's something you want to do, just do it. Don't think about it. Obviously, you have to think about certain things, but, you only live once. And that's what I tell myself as well. There's only one life that you live. So why not try it? What's the worst that can happen? It's really not that big of a deal, but try it, no matter what it is.
Yeah. Hopefully more people are finding that during this time of COVID to take chances, because putting things off, being worried about doing something, you just may not get another shot at it. Just we're all grasping at a life, that the life that we had 6 months ago, 7 months ago, it's just not there. So going forward, we have to make the most of everything.
That's right.
So there's probably no better time, than to kind of live by those words of just going for it.
Yeah. And it's really important to stay disciplined right now. Working from home or working on a new project, it's definitely setting goals.
And then tell me where people can find you.
So I'm on Instagram at Martina Kwan, Kwan. I'm on Facebook as Martina Kwan Champion Mindset Coach. There's also a DK Racing School page and Instagram. And
what's DK?
DK is Dwayne Dement, my partner, and my life, who's, we're starting the racing school together, and Martina Kwan. So Dement Kwan Racing School.
Got it. DK. Okay.
Yeah. So, and if you're ever at Willow Springs International Raceway, we're right there by the gate. So come and visit. You'll see my car with my name on it.
I want to come. I do want to come down there. That's it. Like, I ride a motorcycle, and I've thought about taking kind of those courses, like the classes where you go out on a course, but it just petrifies me so much. So that's why, like, what you do is so interesting to me, because I would just be so petrified.
Now there are a lot of girls on motorcycles. Yeah, even more than cars.
So more racers, did you say?
Yeah, they show up at the track days.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, with race cars, it's usually the wife or the girlfriend will show up and just sit in the motorhome or not race. But with the bikers, it's very odd. There are a lot of couples that are doing it together, which I think is wonderful.
I've gotten mushy. I gotta stick myself out there more, do more things. Martina, thanks so much for being here. I'm, like I said, I'm delighted that we've had a chance to chat. And I'm sorry that it's by distance. Hopefully we'll get to meet in person one day at the track would be super incredible for me. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Beth. This has been really wonderful.
Wasn't that great? What stuck out for me was what she said about being the best. What do you need to do to be the best? And that's the challenge in life. Boy, we skate through life, don't we? We just do things. But how often do we think about being the best? And I don't mean that we have to be the best fighter pilot or the best at playing the piano. We could be the best bread maker or the best bread maker in our neighborhood. But improving ourselves, getting better, achieving and striving for more, that's an interesting way to approach life. You can find all episodes of the She's Bold podcast, as well as links to all the things we talked about at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Next week on the She's Bold podcast, I have Tangi Johnson. Tangi's a bodybuilder, and oh my, you must see photos of this woman. Just do a quick search for her. It's Tangi, Tanji Johnson. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing the uplifting stories from my guests, go to patreon.com/bebold. Patreon supporters at just $5 a month get to submit questions for me to ask guests and become part of our private Facebook group, and that is ladies only. They also get access to bonus content, including questions I ask of the guest. To keep up with me, you can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at both Beth Whitwa, BETHWHITWA, and Wandergal. You know, I'm not always great about posting on Instagram. I'm trying to get better. I often post travel photos, right? And I'm not traveling, so that makes it a little difficult. Feel free to leave a message or question at 877-280-5170. I really, really, really appreciate feedback. You can email me at beth@shesboldpodcast.com. And if you've got suggestions for future guests or topics, or if there's anyone you'd like me to bring back to the show, just let me know. I have a little bit more flexibility these days since I'm not doing all of my conversations in person. I'm relying on Zoom. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.